Okay, kiddos, so these will be your notes that go with your characteristics of life. I have to stop talking for a moment so I can write that down for you. Okay, so these are your characteristics of life notes. So what you're supposed to do on your Google Slides is you need to look at what makes something alive. That was your first thing. So think about what are the characteristics that every living thing is going to have. Okay, you'll be narrowing down your list in just a minute. So, or you may have already done it. So, for example, students might say living things are going to breathe. They are going to eat. Um, they might move around. They might have roots like a plant. Okay, they might need water. And they eat food, right? Um, they need energy, these kinds of things, right? Maybe they have cells. So you know that living things are made of cells. Um, maybe you say they have a heart, right? Um, they reproduce. So you can start to think, okay, so these are things that living things can do, right? But does every single thing that's alive do every single one of those that we just listed or that you listed in your on your first slide? And the answer is probably not, right? So what we're going to try to do is narrow that list down, okay? The second portion of your assignment was to make a list of organisms, right? So an organism is just something that's alive. It's a living thing. So the word organism just means a living thing, okay? So you might make a list and you might say a dog, cat, horse, a spider, a fish, and then you might say, well, all animals are alive, right? And you might say, well, a mushroom, maybe a tree. So you might say a tree, a flower, then you might think, well, all plants are alive. Then maybe you think, well, bacteria are alive. We know that. What about viruses? Okay, so we'll talk about viruses maybe here in a minute. So then what we want to do is we want to compare kind of these two lists. So does every single one of these organisms perform every single one of the requirements that you listed previously? And the answer is probably not. But there are requirements of life or characteristics of life that everything that's alive on this planet has to perform or has to meet those requirements, right, to be considered alive. So that's what we're going to look at today. Okay, so let's label the center of our little bubble map here, and I've got squares because bubbles are harder for me to fill in. So we're just going to put the title Characteristics of Life in the middle, and you have a little more space because you can type yours and I'm trying to write by hand, okay? So these are characteristics that everything that's alive is going to have in common. So we'll just kind of try and go down the list a little bit and fill those in. So we know that everything that's alive is going to need to take in some material. So some living things need, well, most everything that's alive is going to need water, right? But that's not all that living things need. They need food. They need to take in nutrients and food for energy, and they need to get rid of waste products. So everything that's alive um, needs stuff, needs materials, but they also need energy, right? So they need materials and energy, and that kind of taken together, the processes that living things do in order to change materials and change energy around, that's called metabolism. Metabolism. Okay, so all living things have a metabolism. So all living things are also made of cells. And you've probably heard that for a long time, that cells are the basic unit of life. So everything that's alive is made of cells. So our discussion or why viruses are kind of considered to be kind of in between living and non-living. Viruses are not made of cells, so they are just some kind of genetic material surrounded by some kind of protein generally, and maybe some lipids outside of that. We're going to learn about what those things are as well, but they're not made of cells. So bacteria are made of cells, so they're alive, but viruses are not made of cells. Some cells are, and cells have different characteristics. We'll be learning about those, about different types of cells this week as well. Okay, so all living things have a metabolism. They're made of cells. All living things have a genetic code, which we call DNA, right? We'll learn about DNA in this class as well. So that's our genetic code. Living things also grow. So you are not the same size now that you were when you were born, but you're also not just like a big giant baby. So not only did you grow, but you also developed, right? So living things are going to grow and develop. And I spelled that totally wrong. Develop. Let's fix it. Let's fix it. Let's try and spell things properly. I can't, my hand gets away from me. Grow and develop. Okay. All living things are going to reproduce in some way. I'm actually going to go up here. All living things reproduce, and there are two types of reproduction. There is asexual reproduction, where one organism basically copies itself, and then there is sexual reproduction, where you have two parents who contribute genetic material to an offspring, right? So everything that's alive is going to reproduce. Whether they do that sexually or asexually depends on what kind of organism they are. Okay, so next let's look at a couple of these kind of go together. So let's talk about something that organisms do as individuals, and that is that they respond to their environment. So an example where they respond to changes in the environment. So an example of that would be if you go outside right now, it's in the summertime, right, and you get hot, you're going to start to sweat. So the purpose of sweating, it is a response to a change in your environment, and the purpose of sweating, as you should know, is to bring your body temperature back down. Your body's getting hot and it doesn't want to be hot, and when that water, the sweat evaporates off your skin, it cools your body down because the water takes heat with it out into the atmosphere there. So that is a response to the environment that also helps you to maintain an internal balance in your body. So all living things have to do that as well. They have to maintain internal balance. And this is a word that you have to know from here on out. I'm going to show you right here. Let me change colors. We're going to learn this word. It is called homeostasis. And that means to maintain an internal balance. So when you are sweating to help keep your body temperature where it needs to be in the right place, not too hot, not too cold, that is trying to maintain homeostasis. So kind of on the opposite side of that, if you are very cold, your body's going to start to shiver. So that is a response that is going to help maintain your internal balance and warm you up the opposite way. So I want to point out a distinction between this respond to the environment characteristic and the next one. So the next, responding to your environment is an individual response. So you as an individual can sweat, you as an individual can shiver, you can get thirsty and need to drink water to maintain your water balance in your body. But you as an individual can't do this next one. So the very last characteristic of life applies to species or populations as a whole. So there is one word here, and I want you to remember a 3-word definition for it. So all living things, or groups of living things, are going to evolve. And here's the definition for that. It means change over time. Now that does not mean you are changing over your lifetime. It means that over a long period of many generations, a population of species can change their characteristics can change because those with characteristics best suited to survive in their particular environment will do so. So over time, their population will evolve. So try and keep that in mind, that respond to the environment and evolve are not the same thing, okay? Responses are individual responses, things that can happen, whereas evolution or changing over time is something that only a population can do, a group of species or a group of individuals of the same species. Else,